So this is week 9, and it is the second lesson of week 9. In the previous lesson, we talked about additional navigation option when we can pass optional parameter. Also, we talked about how to retrieve data from a server in particular case, and how to retrieve data. We continue talking about how to retrieve data from a server. I've already had example where data was pet data. Then we had example authored by Google from Google course. It was retrieving data that contains links to images. It was Mars images example. And at the previous lesson, we had a fancy example where data is a set of quiz problems retrieved from a server, store it locally, and use it locally. So server interaction was still retrieving the data, but in this case, it contained query parameter, number of problems to generate quiz on the server. When it was received, it was stored locally, and further interaction with user was didn't involve server, unless user asked for new quiz data. I will continue with this example today, and I will talk about how to navigate with serializable objects. Why do we need to know it? It's a new approach with the current navigation system 2. And it appears like this navigation approach is cleaner. It is harder to make mistakes this way if we do so. Code is somewhat shorter, so it's a good idea to learn. Definitely we should know, currently we should know our older navigation approach using strings, because by far the most Google examples are written this way. So if we don't know how it works, we will not be able to understand code. As previously I discussed that learning details of older navigation system is necessary only to understand older code, but it's better to use a newer approach in order to write your own code. Speaking about assignment 3, since assignment 3 was posted long ago, you can choose whatever navigation system you want. You can use the one that was used at the time when it is posted, definitely. The same as in pet data. This will be the easiest approach. You can use the navigation with serializable objects if you want. We will learn how to do this today. Today it's not difficult, and transition is quite smooth, so it's another approach. You can even try navigation 3 system. I will introduce it today, and we will have example using navigation 3 system. It's definitely new, but I don't advise you to do it in your assignment 3. The reason is that it's still a release candidate. It's not guaranteed stable version of it. But since it's a release candidate, perhaps API will be the same in final version. So for this reason, it is a good idea to know what it's about, because most likely by the time when you need to do Android project, it will be navigation 3. Navigation 2 lasted for several years, for I would say like more than 5 years. So I anticipate that navigation 3 will also stay around for at least 5 years. So by the time when you need to write project like capstone project, if you choose Android to do so, most likely it's current will be navigation 3. So there is no point of using navigation 2 at that point. So for this reason, I will explain basics of navigation 3 today with example. And I'm still thinking maybe we should check, pick a project with navigation tool, not serializable, like with strings, and change it to option with serializable objects or even to navigation 3. As like coding together practice, maybe for next lesson, or maybe if we have lots of time left in today, we will do today. I will see, depending how much it takes time to explain the current situation. Anyway, for assignment 3, my plan is to keep as it is posted, obviously, because you already started. And for assignment 3, use whatever navigation system you're comfortable with. I will expect that probably you will use strings, because it's definitely simplest for that one, because it doesn't have many options, it has only one option to pass. It is like item ID. So it will be simplest. You can switch to serializable if you want, but again, it is slightly different approach, and switch is straightforward. You will see it today. This is different approach. Navigation 3 is different approach. So, and also it is release candidate. I made it work for my example, and I'm a little cautious advising you to do it in assignment, because who knows, maybe it won't work in your case. So for this reason, I will a little cautious about if you want to use it in assignment, do it on your own risk if you want to. But it's a good idea to know how it works, how it's expected to work. So for this reason, I made an example with navigation 3. Right. So I keep playing with example called mass trainer. And my current approach in teaching the course to make my own examples up to date, to latest and greatest available, or at least making best effort to make it latest and greatest available technology, and still use examples from Google course, what people learn, as long as they're working. So if they work, we can use it, but I do not plan to edit their code. I tried to do it before. It takes a huge amount of time investment, plus also, it's also programming skills to understand older code. So for this reason, because it's also programming skills to understand slightly older code, not like written a decade ago, but at least three years ago, for this reason, I decided not to change their code. So it's because it's useful, okay? When you write your code, you have to refer to examples probably not updated in 3 and 5 more years. In this case, it's useful to know how it was 3 years ago, not how it was 1 month ago. Okay. So for this rationale, I'm not changing examples from Google. I'm just creating my own data current and use it in parallel with Google examples. So what did they do? In the previous lesson, we talked about retrieving data from the server, and I didn't change that part. It is exactly the same as was explained at the previous lesson. I didn't change navigation system for that version of the code using strings. Also, I didn't touch that one. And I create a version that is using serializable objects a similar way, and I create a version that is using navigation 3. To have a comparison, how they relate to each other. So if you see older code, you know how to write newer code because you have a comparison case between older code and newer code for navigation. So for this reason, it is useful skill at this moment to know all three, because if example is written older way, you can still understand it and write newer way using portions of older code. As a reference, obviously, not as cheating. So this is my approach. So let's clone a mass trainer example and start from the point how it was explained last time, and I will introduce new topic, navigation with serializable after that. So I'm going to GitHub, and I invite you to clone it again because I created two new branches, and it's probably easier just to clone it again. Speaking about mass trainer example, as previously chatted about it, mass trainer example has lots of potential because it has a potential to grow. Because we can have multiple quizzes, we can have data stored on a server, we can have data stored on the cloud. So I plan to reusing it. So next step of complexity is probably to have similar example with new navigation system, but using multiple quizzes. Why? Because I want to grow this example further and resolving logic with multiple quizzes right now and writing GUI for multiple quizzes, which is not huge investment, it is just several hours of work, is good time because before we push data, before we store data on a server. So perhaps for next lesson it will be the same kind of thing, but with new navigation and multiple quizzes in the example. So this is a plan for next lesson. And lesson after that, we will start using cloud. Okay? So where we are in table of contents, in week 1, I posted class plan, and I'm sticking to it at this moment. Today we're in week 9, and we still with data store in room. And in the next lesson, I plan to introduce, not next week, I plan to introduce Firestore. See Firestore, introduction to Firestore. Or most likely, next lesson will be still current, the same idea, but with new navigation system. And since it's new navigation system, let's have its fancier way because we can have a more than one quiz in the program. Okay. So this is a plan. And also, when data will be on cloud, it will be also more than one quiz in the program. In the program. Because I'm a little uncomfortable with example provided by this lady from Google because she has only one list. And dealing with more than one list, it's definitely more logic, and she didn't really explain how to do it in her code. In real-life application, like you do capstone or whatever, you definitely need more than one kind of table or more than one list. So it's useful skill to deal with it. Okay. My situation is simpler than what she plans to do. Because in my situation, I don't plan to share quizzes between different users. Because quiz is generated for given user, and user is taking it. So in this case, quizzes will be shared between different devices used by the same user. For example, user has tablet and phone or two phones. So they say the same way, user will be able to access and answer questions of the same quiz from different locations or different devices. Her situation is more complicated. Currently, she has only one list, which is not shared between users, and it's only one. But according to her code, it has provisions like she is planning to have to-do lists shared between different users. So her logic is more complicated. Perhaps this is why she is postponing doing that or still thinking about how to do it, because sharing data between multiple users is more complicated than sharing data between users, between devices of the same user. You have assignment 4 coming up. In assignment 4, you are asked to have just one list. It is similar to assignment 2. In assignment 2, you are asked to create a shopping list program that is a Disney shopping list. For assignment 4, I already announced it. It's not posted because you don't have background to do it. You will reuse the same GUI or improve it if you want. You can definitely copy-paste parts of it from your assignment 2. It is also a shopping list program with one list. If you can make it 2 lists, it's fine. Or not 2, multiple lists, it's fine. But expectation is just to make at least one working. There's no requirement to have more than one, and there's no requirement to share it between different users. It is definitely a possibility for a program, logical possibility, to make lists shareable. For example, shopping list shared between members of the same family. Right? It makes sense. Right? So people add items to the shopping list. Okay, and by the end of the week, they have shopping list to go and shop. Okay, so in terms of shopping list and sharing list between users makes sense, but it's definitely far more work. So don't do that unless you have it working not shareable way. And also, when doing so, it makes sense also to have more than one list. One is shared, one is not shared, or something like that. Right? So it is definitely far more work, so don't do that unless you finished simplest case scenario, because this can take unpredictable lengths of time. So, because things tend to go wrong when we try to do it, invest time, and it doesn't work eventually, we have to backtrack to simpler version. So for assignment 4, it is still 1 week, one list, one list, not shared. So you can stick to either her approach or my approach, because my approach will be somewhat different, and because in the quiz, I mean. It will be somewhat different because I don't plan to make quizzes shared. But according to her code, she plans to have to-do list shared. So her logic is more complicated because of it. But anyway, if it is only one list, you can either stick to her or mine, because it doesn't really matter. So this is the plan. Mass trainer will have more than one list, more than one quiz. So it will be like option to add new quiz, and it will be a screen with list of quizzes. So you click on the quiz and you take the one from the list. And it definitely requires several hours of work, probably even a couple days. So I will do that. So this is where we are. So let's clone current version of it and code, clone, copy, and I will make sure that I don't have this in my folder. So I will not overwrite existing one. In this case, it will break the code. So mass trainer, Android, I will delete this one. Move to trash, and I will clone to the same folder. Copy, open Android. By the way, Android is updated. You saw its different logo. Its current name is Otter. Your code will this probably will work with older one as well, but it's a good idea to run updates when you have time. For this, do not try and update last moment before assignment is due, because who knows, it may break, but it didn't break for me, so it was smooth update. So let's clone that one, and I paste Command V, and I will clone it. By default, let's wait till it builds. By default, it clones main, goes to main. Main does not have access to web. It generates data locally. It has also other branches. No GUI, which is really old one. No database, also old one. And adaptive screens, I will retire most of the code because navigation with navigation 3 is different. Especially for larger screens, when we want to show more than one item on the screen, like a list and details at the same time. And list and details are done differently in navigation 3. Since the plan is to switch to navigation 3, yeah, I will retire it for a while till I have code for cloud, till I have code for multiple quizzes, and eventually port it that way. But definitely what we learned for different screens, it's definitely useful information. It's only navigation is done differently, but adjusting to different screen sizes, it is done as the same, because it's about layouts, switching layouts, it's not about navigation. Right? So let's go to the point how we left it last time, and it was using server. Check out. So this is how it was left last time. It was previous lesson. Okay. So let's synchronize, since this version is using different libraries. Say here, use embedded GDK. Okay, a build successful. So let's look at navigation system. It is set up in app root screen. So this is what we discussed last time. Navigation is specified through strings, and strings are used as addresses, and strings also used to pass data. So, for example, here you see I'm inserting number which will be selected, problem ID that will be selected on the list. So data is also passed through those strings. Or, for example, here I'm inserting problem ID into address line, and you see problem ID inserted here is different from problem ID inserted here. Different way, because at this point, I'm inserting problem ID after slash. At this point, I'm inserting into key value pair. What is the difference? When it is passed as key value pair, it is optional parameter, so if I don't pass it, it will use some default value. Because in this case, I have also navigation to list of problems without the parameter. So let's look where it is. You see, from home screen, I navigate to list of problems without parameter. So this is how optional works. You don't provide it, so it will use some default value. Okay. To list of problems without parameter. Okay. What is missing in the current code? So let's run it, and so to make it apparent. It says SDK location Android home environment variable by setting SDK dir not found, so we have to clean this project. So let's try to clean it. Build clean project, synchronize. It is related to the fact because I switched used a different navigation system, and it was different settings, so it compiled differently. So let's try to run it again. It should definitely work because I didn't touch this code since the previous lesson. It is exactly the same code. Okay, so what do I have here? typically, when we are at home screen, there is some button here that opens navigation drawer in the corner. So this part is missing. I did just brute force hack. I just created buttons instead of navigation drawer here in the corner. So this part is missing. Navigation, typically there is some menu in the corner that opens navigation system. Okay. Also, when you go to some other item in the navigation, you typically have some back button, which is called differently. It's called up button, not back button, it's up button, which is different from this back button. Back button takes you to previous screen to popping up stack. Up button, it is programmed by you, and typically usually it is popping stack unless you are in home screen. But in the home screen, it is last item, so it's not popping stack. It is just the button disappears. Okay, so you do, because the popping stack on for the last item take you outside of the app. It will close the app. So typically for home screen, instead of back button, we have a menu button that opens navigation drawer. Currently, this program in this current version is not popping stack at all, because when we navigate to home, it just adds extra item home on navigation stack. So even if we go to home and click back button, it will keep popping stack. So this feature is missing, and it's definitely relatively easy to resolve because we can navigate with extra option to pop stack. So it is extra options to navigate available in navigation 2 system to pop stack during navigation. So when we return to home, we don't have a history left. So it will wipe off history. So apart from this back button and wiping of history when you go to home, because we don't want to grow history indefinitely, because when we navigate, it will keep growing history. So the typical approach is to pop up everything from the stack when we go to home, so it will clear up history when you go to home. And when you go to home, back button disappears. So it does not give you option to go to pop stack anymore, because it will take you out of your app. So this currently is not here. I will add it when I add back buttons to stay in agreement with that one. So this is the only part from navigation system is missing. It's also definitely, it's only one quiz. And if it is more than one quiz, navigation will be more complicated because you will have more items on this, more screens, right? And also problems will belong to different screens. So different quizzes. Maybe it will, message will be like quiz 1, problem 1 or something like that, right? Because it should kind of tell you where you are, right? So it does require extra thinking, but we're on the right track. So let's talk about a new topic. In content, I created a link to new theory, navigate with serializable objects. So let's go there and see how it's done. It says that for paths in this approach, we don't use strings, we use serializable objects instead of strings to define navigation. They also told us that we need to use Kotlin serialization plugin in order to make it work. And this is how to add it. We are extremely lucky for current program because it's already using current serialization plugin in order to retrieve data from web. So we didn't have to add it, okay? Because we use Kotlin serialization plugin to retrieve data from web to convert retrieved data from web into Kotlin objects. So we didn't have to edit in order to convert code into new code. When we go here, instructions how to edit, we see that it is using serialization to JSON library. It suggests that perhaps she is, or not she, they, whoever planned this new approach, perhaps creating strings that not the strings in the format how we used it before, but in JSON. So most likely it is just to stay compatible between older approach and new one. They decided, okay, let's use JSON strings for it. Since JSON is a string essentially, right? So they serialize into JSON string and use it. No, this appears what is going on under the hood. And definitely we did not need to add this library because we've already used this library to get data from web. So bottom line, if I have a project that is already retrieving data from web using Kotlin serialization and retrofit, we don't need to add any libraries when we convert our code with navigation with strings to navigation with serializable objects. So it is the same libraries that we already use it. Okay. So let's switch branch. So let's stop it. Let's switch branch to where I have code navigate with serializable objects. This branch, remote, navigate with serializable objects checkout. I will do first checkout. Okay. Interesting. You don't have to switch at once. This is what I realized before when I was coding it. You can have part of your system using navigation, using strings, part of them using navigation object, provided it stays consistently, it still works. I assume it's not a bug, it's a design decision. Okay? So we can have a mixed things because it will help us to convert program in steps, which is a good feature. We can add new features new way and keep older one as long as it's working, okay? And convert it later when we have time. So this is what I realized. You can convert all destinations into serializable objects like this: settings, details, and list. Or you can convert just one, but make sure it's consistent. If you navigate with string, you use string address. If you navigate with object, you use object address. Okay? So it appears like within the same program, you can have string addresses and object addresses. As long as your navigation is consistent, you navigate to object, you use object address. You navigate to string, you use string address. So when I was experimenting with it, so I was, here it is Google, Git. This branch navigate with serializable objects. First, I replaced just one destination with object home, and I checked that it's working. Yeah, it did work. Right? So what did I do there? I created serializable object, and I call it this home destination. And when it is, when object doesn't have parameter, we just call object. We just create object because it can be the same all the time. But when we need to pass parameters into destination, we declare data class. Why? Because it's different parameters. This is the reason. We have to create new objects from the data class by calling constructor to pass different parameters. So first I replaced home destination with object, and you see start destination is not home string, it is object, serializable object. Okay. In the place where I navigate did before navigate to home and use its string. Now it is navigate, and for destination, I use home destination object. And also home destination replacing string. Okay. And it did work, although some destinations were strings, some, as you see, objects. As long as you keep it compatible, you navigate to object and you use address as an object, it works just fine, no issue. So what was the next step? We already know this approach, so I could do it for settings the same way. Did I commit it? No, I didn't commit it. So next, I replace it details destination. And for details destination, actually I did both. You see, I added settings because it is the same. I know how to do the home, and settings doesn't require any parameter to navigate. So at this step, I converted settings destination and details. But in details, please notice it's not an object, it's data class, because we pass different IDs each time. So we have to call constructor. Right? And for required parameters, this is not nullable, it is just type that you want to pass. In this case, problem ID is integer. Okay. So what do I have below? When I navigate to specific problem, so it is navigate to first problem link. From home screen, I have navigate to first problem. So I create problems detail destination, calling constructor problem is equal to 1. I also have navigation from the list, you see here, to specific ID. And ID is retrieved from the problem, right? So we have a problem given to this lambda function, and problem ID given to the lambda function that is retrieved from the list. When you click on a problem, you know problem ID, and you call lambda function. And you see, it is inserted into constructor call problem ID. Also, similar thing. How to retrieve this parameter? Because now you have an object as an address. So this is definitely new information, how to retrieve it. We use backstack entry as before, and backstack entry can be converted to route. And route is actually your destination object. When you call backstack entry to route, it will create your destination, it will give you your destination object. And this object, problem details destination, does contain problem ID because you created such class, right? Problem destination that contains problem ID. So this is how to pick problem ID from navigation system. Problem details screen relies also on view model. How to retrieve problem ID inside of view model? Because this is a real question. If you convert it here, would it work in view model? Because my view model relies on knowing problem ID. As you see, it wasn't changed. It's not in the list of changes. It means previous approach worked. I didn't change, it works fine. So view model is able to retrieve parameter exactly the same way as before. in navigation 2 using serializable objects, which is good news because we don't have to rewrite view model, which is different from navigation 3. Unfortunately, in navigation 3, we had to rewrite view model because of it. And view model code became more complicated. Surprise, surprise, but OK. It happens. Okay. So in current navigation 3, there is no way to retrieve retrieve data from navigation inside of view model. And I look it up, they recommend to retrieve it in the navigation and give it to composable function, and composable function gives it to view model. So it is more complicated approach. And we need to discuss it, and I have example for it, because it's not easy to figure out. I spent hours. Okay, so not hours, probably like hour, a little bit. So what is the next step? It is to convert code that has optional parameter. So far we had navigation without parameter, navigation with required parameter, and now you know that navigation to list in this case has optional parameter, which problem is selected on the given list, shown, selected on the given list. So I'm about to convert this code. How to do it? So replace this list destination. When we replace list destination, and it has, when we replace this with serializable object, they tell that when it is optional, use nullable and assign default value because it's optional, so it's not provided, it will use default value. The question is, if you provide default value, why do you have to make it nullable? I assume it is for code compatibility in the system because you want to make strings work exactly the same as objects. So it is for internal reasons. Otherwise, it doesn't look like logical. If you provide values, why do you need to make it nullable? Unless you provide null. Okay? If you provide null, of course, you need to make it nullable. Right? So where did I get this information? So it says here, this is how to provide parameter. In this case, it's a string. In my case, it is integer, so it goes by analogy. And they say, for optional arguments, create nullable field and do default value. In their case, assign nullable makes real sense because they assign null, so they should be able to assign null. In my case, I assign 0, but I'm still sticking to recommendation because it appears like two separate things. Create nullable and assign default value, not null, right? They say default value assign, not null. It appears like their requirement is asking us to use nullable. Doesn't matter what you assign. And my interpretation, they want to make code compatible with strings code such a way that you can have two things within the same system. Okay? So for this reason, I decided to make it nullable even if I assign 0 as default. And because I don't know what happens under the hood in the guts of the system, and if it says for optional parameter make it nullable, I believe them. Okay? It's perhaps for internal reasons. So for list destination, since it's optional, I do nullable and assign 0 by default. And after this, it is by analogy. So problem list destination, I'm retrieving destination. I'm picking what is selected, but since it's nullable, I have to give 0 again. Or I will have to do it double exclamation mark, which is converted to not nullable. In either case, it's fine, so I decided, okay, let's give it 0 again. Okay. I could use double exclamation mark because it already has default value 0 in it. So this would not be used because it's not null, because by default it is 0 there. And it is passed to the same GUI function. So when we converted navigation with strings to navigation with GUI, we didn't have navigation with objects. We didn't have to convert GUI at all. We didn't have to convert view models. So transition is quite painless compared to going to navigation 3. In navigation 3, I had to change code slightly. So it is not as painless as that. So why did I explain this part? Because currently, code from that lady, Google lady, who wrote, I forgot her name, sorry, who wrote an example for data storage, data store for Firebase that is storing to-do list. She is using this approach in the navigation, serializable objects in her code. Last time I checked it was that, unless she updated. So in order to understand that code, in order to understand code that is using this approach, it's a good idea to be aware of it, how to do it. Even if you don't use it directly, you stick to navigation 3 or older one, it is good to know how somebody else's code works or some Google example works. Okay. So when I close this one, let's synchronize code and run it to see if it's working. So I'm syncing the project. Let's run. Again, reminder that we didn't have to add additional libraries because the libraries that we need to add to navigate with serializable objects, it is serialization plugin and serialization of Kotlin to JSON. It appears like they use JSON under the hood. And so let's see. Go into the list, item, going back to the list, and you see it is selected, so it is passing both. It is passing required parameter and optional parameter. We can go to settings also, it's settings, going back to home, we got it here. So this is about navigation with serializable objects as destinations or routes. And last time I checked her code, it was doing that. So it should be clear now how that part of her code works. So as a practice, we can pick example and convert it into navigation with serializable objects. For example, pet data, and do so just as a coding practice. It's one of the options. If we have time left, we can do that. So it's probably time to have a pause at this moment, to have a break. The reason is that navigation system 3, it is drastically different. So let's have a break, and after this, go to navigation system 3. Also, understanding navigation 2 helps a lot because it also uses serializable objects. But structure, it is quite different. Approach, it is quite different. So let's have a break, and after break, we will learn new theory and how it applies to given problem. Okay? So I will stop recording for the break. Restarting after break. Before the break, I introduced navigation with using serializable objects, and a quick overview. For address that doesn't have parameters, you just declare object and some name of that object. If address contains required parameters, they are given as values of data class. If it contains optional parameters are declared as nullable and with some assigned value. You can have combination of those. When we navigate to object, we just use object name. When we navigate to a serializable data class, we call constructor to create address where we navigate. When we convert from navigation using string to navigation using objects, we have to include serializable plugin and Kotlin serialization plugin and a library for serialization into JSON. I assume that they use strings containing JSON under the hood. Our code is similar and transition is quite painless in between. One thing I want to emphasize before we go to navigation 3. In navigation 3, logic of this is somewhat copy-pastable, but you have to change a lot. Okay? But, we can keep similar logic by knowing analogies. So it's not a waste to know this approach in order to convert to navigation 3. But there is one big difference at this moment, that, for example, in details screen, home view model receives problem ID from saved stack handler. What's called saved state handle. Saved state handle. So navigation parameter in navigation to system is available inside of view model. This makes code a lot simpler. If you think this is complicated code, you haven't seen the one with navigation 3 yet. Okay? So this is a simpler version of it. Because problem ID is available to view model directly. If it's not, we have to go with extra around way of doing it. Okay? So with navigation 3, this will be set by calling load data method from composable function, we'll see. Because we cannot do it in navigation 3, unfortunately. I tried, it crashes because it says no. Okay? I also look up how to do it, and there is a recommended way to retrieve it from navigation system, give it to composable function, and composable function give it to view model. So it's not direct way from navigation to view model, but from navigation to composable and from composable to view model. So we had to change GUI logic for that. For navigation 3, we have to change GUI logic. So let's talk about navigation 3. In week 9, I posted 2 links related to that. Announcing Jetpack Navigation 3, so this is where it was introduced, and this is documentation about it. So let's go to announcing. So they have, it is blog post, and they say, our older system doesn't have built-in way to deal with multiple screens on this, with large screens when we display more than one destination at the same time. For example, for smaller screen, you can have a list and details. For larger screen, you can have both. With a navigation 2 system, we can do that. Yeah, you saw it. It was working, but it's a hack. It's not a part of. It's not part of this intended way of doing it. It's just way around it. So for navigation 3, it's part of the system, so we can use it directly when we learn how to do it. Right? Today, it's not part of today's lesson. So also, other principles, founding principles, we have full access to bug stack. So we own it, we create it, and we update full bug stack. And bug stack is reflected by navigation system. Previously, we call it navigate, and it was updating bug stack. So this is what's done. Now, we no longer call navigate, it's no such function. We add stuff to bug stack ourselves, and it shows what is on top of it or other things next to it, if we want to show more than one. Okay. So this is drastic difference. We create bug stack ourselves, and we update it. And navigation system shows what is on top of it. So this is a major difference. How we save navigation stack? Because when we rotate the screen, unless we save it, we will lose it. It will, and if we don't save it, it will go to home screen after rotation of the screen. So there is one built-in part of it, and we can do it ourselves if we want to. So for today's lesson, I'm using built-in option to save navigation stack during rotation. So unless we do so, it's lost. Data is lost. Okay? So it will go to home screen when you rotate the screen. Okay? It does support animation, and just because we have access not just to top, we can access other things on the stack. It can show more than one destination at the same time. So it supports has direct support of adaptive layouts. It also has support of scope of view model. With navigation 2, you could assign view models to either activities or fragments, but fragments are not always in use, especially when we use compose system. Fragments are mostly for old system. So unless we use hilt view model with navigation 2, we cannot scope view models per destination. Hilt view models, they are scoped per destination. With navigation 2, if you do not use hilt view model, just regular view model, all view models will become global per activity. So this was what we discussed before. With navigation 2, the only way to scope view model to destination is to use hilt view model. And when we use hilt view model, it is hilt dependency injection system. So this is how it is done in navigation 2. With navigation 3, view models can be scoped to destination without using hilt. So this is definitely extra feature that wasn't available before. We can have view models per destination without using hilt with new one. Today's example is using hilt, since I used hilt for the data access layer, so there's no point of doing that, so I'm sticking to hilt for that. Also, good new feature that we can split code into modules while using the same destination, so destination system. So different destination code can be in different modules. So also a nice feature. Today we don't use it because our program is so small. No point of splitting into modules to make it harder to code. Okay? All right. Google provides example how to split code to modules. I'm not sure if I want to look at that in this course because it's quite complicated example. So most likely you learn it when you need it, essentially. It does work. Currently, there is a release candidate, and I use that release candidate, it works. So how it looks like? With current system, we use nav host, and we set destination routes and lambda functions that will be called when we navigate to that route. With navigation 3, we declare variable which is bug stack. So bug stack is created outside of nav host. It's not something assumed inside, right? But inside of what do we call it? Navigation controller, right? In navigation 2, backstack, it's part of navigation controller. And now there's no navigation controller. You have backstack. And navigation host is, navigation display is displaying stuff on navigation stack. So there is no such thing as navigation controller at this moment here. You see, backstack, remember, mutable list of, mutable state list of this. Just because it is mutable state list of, it is state, updating the stack will refresh the screen. So this is how it works. You update it yourself, and refreshes the screen, and a navigation display will display whatever is on stack. So this is the approach. Okay. So, and you see, navigation display, now we have a link to stack here. What to do on back, remove last, right? And after this, we have a decision maker, like entry provider. When route is something on what is on the stack, displays that thing. When route is another object, this thing, as you see, it is using objects to navigate. So there is a link to what was explained before to navigation 3. It is using objects to navigate. You see, if destination doesn't have a parameter, we can create object. If it does have parameter, we can put it into class or data class. So approach is quite similar. But when we do navigation, we do not call nav controller navigate because there's no nav controller. We call backstack add entry to backstack to change what is on top, so system will show what is new thing on top. If we remove last one, we will call what's that? Remove last or null. If we want to remove more, we will edit this backstack because it has list options to edit. We can remove up to some point. Okay? So today's example shows that. What is wrong with this simple approach? If you stick like this, to code exactly like that, it will work, but when you rotate the screen, it goes to home screen. This is probably not what you want. We need to save data somehow, right? We shouldn't flip pages. It shouldn't flip pages when you rotate the screen, right? So it's not in the introduction. It is. They have a recipes repository that shows how to deal with different situations, like, for example, list and details, and how to deal with logins. Logins is another issue with navigation because login is changing your navigation pattern because you show different things depending on if you log it in or you didn't log in. So it's another issue which is not straightforward, by the way, login issue. Scenes allows us to show more than one item on the screen from navigation stack. So this was the introduction into idea, and the rest is in documentation, navigation 3. So it is a reiteration of what was just said, how to deal with it, get started. So they tell what libraries to include. As you see, they already have, they use TomML because it's new system, new documentation. So this is already easier to copy-paste because it's a TomML system, right? TomML file. And what to include. As you see, it relies on Kotlin serialization. And it says it's optional. Okay? Please notice that those destination doesn't have add serializable on top. Right? Because in the code that we just saw, there's no add serializable on top of that object. But they say that optionally include serialization. Why? The reason is that if you want to save your stuff during rotation of the screen, we have to do it serializable or do something else on our own way. Okay? If we want to preserve current page during rotation, or current page count during rotation, navigation stack, we need to include Kotlin serialization in it. So it's not that optional. If you want to keep your screen during rotation, you have to put serializable. Okay? And other libraries depends on if you include hilt or not. Because this set of libraries, it is for not using hilt. And because perhaps it is simplest option, I looked up how to use hilt with navigation 3, and my example is using hilt with navigation 3. So I have I included slightly different libraries because some of them are hilt libraries. Okay. So if you want to use navigation 3 with assignment 4, for example, it's not a requirement, but if you want to, you better copy-paste from my example because it's using hilt. Okay. So this is to be aware of, this part. Understanding and implementation backstack. So it's reiterating the same idea that by default it shows what is on top. You can show more than one if you use scenes. Otherwise it shows what is on top. So in order to change things, what is on top, you can either remove stuff from the stack, so it will show what is below because you removed stuff from the top. Or you add something on the top, and it will show what is added. So what is on your screen, it is what is on the top of the stack. So this is manipulation with it. So we can create backstack by calling remember, mutable state list of, and this is the first destination product list. Cool, again, it will work, but it will disappear when you rotate the screen. This is the issue. How to make it not to disappear? It is separate piece of theory. Okay? So what do we see here? They created destination. If a destination is without parameters, they use data object. If it is with parameters, they use data class. So in order to navigate, they call it constructor. So it is exactly the same approach as before, right? Data class, no, before it was object, not data object, just object. Now it is data object, but data it is just to, I don't know, for convenience, I would say. Okay. And they created data class, product details. They are not serializable because this example of what we see on the screen is not preserved in stack during rotation. Okay. And stack created this way will not be saved during rotation. So in order to navigate, they add new destination to the stack, and system will show what is on top of the stack. In order to go back, we remove remove items from the top of the stack. It will show what is new item on the stack, which was below, because we removed thing from the top. So this is the approach. How to resolve it? So we create a map resolving what's composable to show, because stack currently it is just an object that can potentially contains IDs of data, right? So we need another parameter of navigation display, nav display. It is entry provider. It is function that is connecting keys. Key, it is what is on the stack. object on the stack, it's a key. Connecting key and what to show is a composable. So, and there is a shortcut for it, but this is compact enough, so I'm sticking to that in my example. So there is a key and is, if this is list, I'm showing navigation entry, and this is composable to show next to it, okay? To show on the screen. And then if it is product detail, it's again navigation entry for the key, and they show that we can add more parameters if we want to. And composable. Otherwise, we show that one. This is a trap. Don't do it. This one. It's a no unit. Unit means nothing, right? But if you, when you go to the code that is saving navigation stack during rotation, this makes it not compilable. I spent 1 hour to figure out why it's not compiling. So the fix is not to use unit, use key. Just use key here. Although it's not used, you write key the same way here. Otherwise, code will not compile. So this is compilation issue when you go to saving stack to preserve it during rotation. They didn't tell explicitly, but it takes time to figure out why code is not working, not compiling. So I'm telling you ahead of the time. So there is a shortcut for it. It is to call entry provider function that is wrapping this stuff. I decided not to do it. I kept it explicitly like on the top, without this wrap, entry provider, entry, entry, entry. Okay. So this definitely makes it more compact, but it's more mysterious. So this is why I didn't use it. So how to make it save it? So it displays the bug stack. It is the same idea, but they expand it. How to make it save it? So it is explanation of what it said just on picture. Okay. We have bug stack with that is storing keys. Navigation display has access to bug stack because when we call this function, it's given to here. And entry provider is also a function given to navigation display that picks item according to the key. And item to be displayed, it is composable function. Okay. And navigation display is dealing with navigation entry, and content is coming from entry provider. So the same thing that we just saw in the code. How to save it? When you save, there is option to do it yourself, but there is a built-in option, so we don't have to worry about doing this ourselves. So if we want to preserve navigation stack during rotation of the screen, every destination must be serializable and must inherit from nav key. Nav key is a marker interface. It's not doing anything, it's just telling the system that this item should be preserved. Okay. So in order to make navigation stack pre-savable, we mark destination with serializable, and they need to inherit from nav key. And we create bug stack special way, like remember nav bug stack. So it is not previous one, it is specific one to make stack savable automatically. Remember nav bug stack, and parameter, it is first destination where we start. In this case, it is home. Okay. When you use this one, this approach, this unit will be compilation issue. You have to replace it with word key, like here. You see, key, key, key. Otherwise, this will not compile. Okay. So otherwise it is compiling. So let's see it, how it works. Because I converted code for math example using navigation 3. Right? So here it is, a math trainer, and it is separate branch. So I will stop it from running. I will flip the branch to using navigation 3. Using navigation 3, check out. I will definitely need to sync clean probably first. Build clean. Next, synchronize, because it's definitely totally different library, so we have to synchronize it. And now let's see what we have. Okay. A lead versions TomML. I'm adding navigation 3 core library, and version is release candidate 1 of version 1. And I'm also adding lifecycle view model from navigation 3. This is requirement even if you want to use HILT, this is requirement. Otherwise, it will not compile. I drop it HILT lifecycle view model compose because HILT is dealing with it different way now with navigation 3. And what I added navigation 3 runtime library, navigation 3 UI library, and view model navigation. It's not HILT view model. HILT navigation is already there. You see, HILT navigation compose there, and lifecycle view model navigation is added. So this combination of libraries is currently recommended for using HILT and navigation 3. Later could be different, but this is what is current situation. I didn't add anything because Kotlin serialization plugin is already there because we use it to retrieve data from web. Okay. What else did I change? In global build Gradle, nothing changed. Changes are in local. I added these 3 libraries here, and I removed HILT lifecycle view model compose. This is how to add navigation 3 to the system that is using HILT. Also, I didn't need to add Kotlin serialization option because this project already have it here, or already has it here because it's retrieving data from web using Kotlin using retrofit and Kotlin serialization plugin using JSON serialization. All right. So this, let's see the code. I will close this comparison, and it requires two changes. One change is to change navigation inside of app root screen. Okay, and as already mentioned, view model had to be edited because in my case, a view model was accessing data from navigation stack, and this is not available right now. So one of the view models had to be edited. And it's also a learning experience, and it's a good idea to learn this way because the lady that wrote code for cloud example, she is using similar approach in her code. So approach is not specifically to go around this issue, it's also useful learning experience. Okay. Before we go there, into that situation, let's first look at APP root screen. What do I have here? I created destinations, and they are serializable because I want to preserve navigation stack during rotation. Approach is the same as before. When the destination doesn't have parameters, I declare this as object. When it has parameters, it's data class, and I call constructor before navigating. Just because I use built-in this option to preserve navigation stack, serializable objects inherit from nav key. Nav key, it is marker interface. It doesn't do anything. It just tells the system to preserve it. So in my root screen, what do I have here? I create nav back stack the same way as said on slides, not on slides, in documentation. Remember nav back stack, home. Next, instead of nav host, it is nav display, and I give back stack to nav display, so it is linked. I provided what to do on back, similarly to documentation slide. I remove last or null on going back. Okay. And now we have entry provider that resolves what composable to show for specific key. Remember that back stack contains only key now, nothing else. Right? So key. When I'm at home, when I navigate, when top of back stack is home, I'm showing home screen. See? And navigation to, for example, first problem, I adding problem details for problem 1 to back stack. So there is no call navigate because there is no nav controller. We have access to back stack, and in order to navigate to another destination with option to go back, we add item to back stack. Like here, you see back stack, add, in order to navigate to the first one, it is problem details, entry with problem ID 1. In order to navigate to list, similarly, back stack add problem list. I did not provide parameters because in this case it's optional, so it will use 0, right? Why? Because you see it's a 0. It will use 0. And next, settings, the same as settings, and this is not navigation, this is pop-up. Next, problem list. Problem list is simpler because I didn't have to change controller, and I didn't have to change GUI. I didn't have to change view model, and I didn't have to change GUI. And details is different. So let's see. Navigation problem list, nav key is the same. Then I'm retrieving data from the key. What is key? It's an object used in the navigation. That object for list, see, problem list contains data field selected. This one. So key.selected, it will be whatever is integer. It will be ID of selected item. See? So key, it is problem list, contains field selected. It gives me selected, but since it's nullable, I explicitly say it's use 0 when it's not there. Now, problem screen function is exactly the same. How to navigate to home? Remember that previous version is just adding stack, including to home. And I said that it's probably a lot nicer if we just clear stack when we go to home. So I'm doing this explicitly because I have access to navigation stack directly. So I can say remove if. So it's an option of the list. Remove if item is not home. So it will remove everything except home. And home will be somewhere next to the bottom because this is where you started. So in order to go home, I'm removing everything from the stack except what was at the bottom, which is home destination. So it will clear the stack each time when we go to home destination. So this code is slightly smarter than the previous one where I didn't have this option to clear stack when we go to home. I will add that one just to show it's possible. Okay. Problem details has bigger issue when we convert the code. And the bigger issue that problem ID is not known to view model explicitly anymore. So we need to give it to view model explicitly. So view model code is more complicated, and even compose code slightly more complicated. So I retrieve problem ID from the key because key is problem details object that contains problem ID, and I give it to problem details screen, a separate parameter. Previously, this parameter didn't exist, problem ID. So I edited problem details screen to explicitly give problem ID to it. Now let's go there. Problem details screen. This is new parameter, problem ID. So what do? I retrieve a view model, but this view model still doesn't know which problem to show. I need to tell it. So I call data details view model load problem, and this is problem ID. Okay. Please notice it is inside of special function called launched effect. And this is critically important. It has to be inside of launched effect. Because what does it do? It is loading data. This is important. It's loading data. But compose functions are called repeatedly each time when you refresh the screen. But you need to load data only when problem ID is different. So this launched effect, it's a special function that will be called only when problem ID is different. Not, okay? Because you don't want to reload data each time when you just need to refresh the screen for the same ID. So this is important. Okay? Do not load each time when you refresh the screen. Load it only when problem ID is different. So this is the meaning of using launched effect. The rest is the same, because you are just displaying data from a view model when it has. But a view model now has two states, loaded and not loaded. So state of the problem details now is more complicated. Loading means it's still about to load, and success when it's loaded. So let's see. Problem details state. And now it is sealed interface, problem UI state, success for the given problem, or still loading when it's not given yet. We didn't call load. Okay? Now let's dive into view model code. Warning, not trivial. Okay? And we have to learn it because cloud code is using similar approach. How it happens? Why it is similar? It has similar issue. In this case, problem is displaying, view model is displaying data based on user ID, problem ID. Okay? But when data is coming from cloud, it's not just single data. It's like it depends on user ID. So you have the same situation. You need to display something inside of your screen given user ID. Okay. So cloud code from Google example is using the same approach, except it is not problem ID, it is user ID to display data of given user. In that case, to-do list of given user. So this approach is reused what we will see in the future. So it's not waste. Okay. So let's open that. Problem details view model. So what do? They map flows using flat map latest function. We already know about map function of a flow. It changes content of the flow, right? In this case, they are mapping two different flows. So they pick item from one flow and replace it with another flow item. Okay? So how it works? They created flow. Oh, I created. Okay? I created flow because it's my code according to examples. Okay? So I did not made up with this approach. It is according to examples. I created problem ID flow. That by default doesn't have anything yet because you didn't receive problem ID. So this is problem ID flow that can contain integer or null. So what happens on load function? You see there is a function load problem which is just changing ID inside of the flow to problem ID. Okay? Problem ID flow, value, problem ID. So this is how it is loaded. I created problem ID flow, and load is changing ID inside of the problem ID flow. In the cloud code, it will be flow of some user ID to load user data. What's next? But I still need to load the data. My data, it is state flow of problem details state. This one, right? But I still don't know user ID. So in order to create state flow of problem details state, I'm mapping from problem ID flow to connect this to flow created below. Problem ID flow, flat map latest, and flow created here, depending what is problem ID. When problem ID is still null, which is initial situation, I'm creating mutable state flow that contains loading state. So when logically, when you didn't call load, you can say initial state or loading state, it's still in loading state. Okay? Problem ID is equal to null, and I set loading state. Otherwise, when it's not null, I can call repository get user problem flow by ID. And remove if it's null. Because potentially problem, if it is deleted, you don't have problem with given ID. Right? And after this, I use the same each logic. If problem status is user right answer, I display right answer in the input. Otherwise, it stays as it is. Okay. And in order to convert user problem flow into problem details UI state, I'm calling success constructor with given user problem. So it was like before, except now I have two options. I'm not calling problem details UI state, I'm calling success, which is, this is interface now. This is data class. And flat map latest is returning flow, not state flow. Although it got state flow as input, it's still returning flow. So I need to convert it to state flow. So I call state in function the same as before. Scope, umodel scope, keep it running for 5 seconds, initial value is loading. So this code is necessary evil, essentially. And this is, we have to use it this way. And it appears like it's unavoidable when we do not know do not have flow unless we know some parameter, like user ID, for example. Because when we retrieve data, in order to show it some synchronized way, right, we need to have a flow, but we cannot create flow unless we know user ID, so we manipulate flow using flat map request. No, flat map latest. Flat map latest. So this is definitely extra piece of learn, but this learning is not just to go around the issue that problem ID is not available inside of view model anymore. It's also learning for the future because cloud code example is using the same approach, but with user ID, not problem ID.